This is Challenging the Narrative, a series that takes a hard look at some of the prevailing mindsets surrounding issues that impact our people of color in Spokane. We examine the facts and the stories behind what has occurred and what needs to be done to shift the narrative in our local community, evolving around civil rights and social justice. Journey with us, talk with us, change with us as we challenge the narratives.
Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Challenging the Narrative. We have a special episode today. My name is Lisa Gardner. I'm the president of Spokane NAACP, and we're here in the Black Lens offices. And I have two special guests because this is a collaboration with the Black Lens. I'm going to kick it off first to our editor of the Black Lens, April Eberhardt. Introduce yourself and welcome.
I am April Eberhardt, the Education Committee Chair for the NAACP and also the editor for the Black Lens.
Thank you. And our special guest today on Challenging the Narrative is none other than Megan Matthews. Hello, welcome to Challenging the Narrative.
Hi, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, April. I'm so grateful to be here with you. My name is Megan Matthews. She, her pronouns. I'm the director of Washington State's Office of Equity, and we're excited. I'm excited for this conversation.
All right. And so, from what I know, you're born and raised in Washington, and it's rare to find someone that's born and raised in Washington. I'm born and raised here in Spokane, and so I'm very proud to hear that you are a native to Washington. So, tell me a little bit about your upbringing and where you're from.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Tacoma, Washington. I graduated from Lincoln High School, and I then have worked with the state for 17 years. So not only am I born and raised to Washington and I care so much about Washington, I'm really competitive too. Athlete, if you can tell. Well, I'm sitting, so you can't tell, but 5 feet 11 inches. So I'm an athlete, so I'm really competitive, and I want Washington State, and I believe Washington State can be the best in all the good things, number one. And then I've grown up in state government, so I started in an entry-level position as a child support case manager, and then worked my way up over the years. And so I have a unique lens in that I bring that into the work of the Office of Equity.
Right. Thank you for that. And I know that a lot of times people say that west side of Washington is greatly different from the east side of Washington, and that is true. But when it comes to community, and especially Black community and people of color, we do have kind of shared similarities and what we're looking for and what we're working towards. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And so let's kind of dive into that with our first question that I have for you is, can you explain the scope and the function of your job with as the equity director?
Yes. So we have a law that created our office. So in 2020, it's RCW 43.060. So if anyone wants to look that up. And there's a lot of words there, but what I like to say is we are here to facilitate policy and systems change. And when you think about that, it's really massive. And when I try to break it down, I say that we're here to change the way government operates, moving from a government that does things to people to a government that does things with people, right? Where we finally become a government of, by, and for all the people, advancing a Washington for all. And so when you think about the system is massive, and it includes all of us. We're all part of the system. Right now, we're starting with state agencies because, that we're a smaller office, and that's where I think we have a lot of work to do. But the goal is that, no matter whether you're local government, nonprofit, community-based organization, that we are all working together, de-siloed, aligned to be more effective and efficient, and make sure that everyone in Washington State, in the ways they need to be served, has their needs met.
All right. Thank you.
So our national narrative is rapidly changing. There's a big anti-DEI push, and we happen to be in a blue state, which I'm grateful for. What are key priorities of the office that you run in advancing equity across Washington, and has it shifted recently?
Yeah, so one thing that's been really important to me. So several years ago in a different position, I went to the soul food restaurant in Tacoma,
Mhm.
and the owner asked me, "What do you do?" And I was like, I'm an equity, diversity, inclusion specialist."
Mhm.
And he said, "What's that?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Uh-oh." I didn't know how to explain it. And I was like, "Oh no, he doesn't know what I'm trying to do." And that was a defining moment for me because I realized that sometimes we use language that people don't understand. And the people that we are trying to serve,
Yeah.
you know, people we're trying to make sure that are included and that our government can do better by. And so for me, in our office, we've been working on how do we talk about what we do in a meaningful way, right? What does systems change mean? What does equity mean? There are terms where if you are familiar with, educated in it, you got a certification, or you just working all the time, it's really familiar, but it isn't as known to I think the broader group of Washingtonians. And so for me, talking about what we're doing, I think is something that everybody is supportive of. So we are doing systems change. What does that mean? So we are desiloing government. We are building more collaboration within state agencies, so that we are reducing any duplication, any gaps, any waste, and government is working better so that when people come and access services, they actually get what they need. Um, when we show up as state agencies or as state agencies, people see us as government. And we'll say, "Oh, I'm from Department of Health, or I'm Department of Social Health Services, or Department of Licensing," but they just see government. And so we need to make sure that we're doing that as well. And so when we're talking about the national dialogue and how we're talking about what the work we're doing, we've already been talking about this. And I think the way that we are moving is going to make sure that everybody is served in the way that their needs that they're met. We use a concept, just to get a little academic, called targeted universalism, by John Powell and the Othering Belonging Institute. It's beautiful, right? What are you trying to achieve at the highest level? And what do each group or community need in order for them to benefit from that or for them to have access? And that's the approach we're trying to take at the state level.
I like what you said about de-siloing, and people tend to think DEI is this separate thing for special people.
Yeah.
But what you just explained is it's a part of everything that happens. It's not this special department that makes sure certain people get certain things that other people can't get. It's really to be integrated into every practice within the government, whether you're at the Department of Licensing or the Social Security Office, which that's federal, but just making sure it's a part of everything. And I think that's important
Yeah.
to communicate.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I come from a low income background. My parents said, "You're gonna work hard, get good grades in school, and go to college, and that's how you're gonna get a good life." Right? That was what I was told, and so I did that. I got good grades in school. I played sports, helped take care of my siblings. Worked. And then it came time to go to college, and I was like, "How do you go to college? How do you do that? What's the process? Do you just show up on campus?" I didn't know. And so for me, the work that we do is about hard work plus access. You can work as hard as you want. I know a lot of people who are working hard. They got 2 or 3 jobs and they're not able to get ahead. And it's because of lack of access. And access, I mean the knowledge. A teacher helped me navigate the process for the college essays, for the tuition fee waivers, for and even where to apply, because I didn't realize you have to pay to apply to college. And so without that knowledge, that support, really, my path would have been different. Maybe I'd still be in this position, but it would have been a different path. And so when we're talking about the work that we do, it is about reducing the barriers, making sure people have access to the knowledge, the resources, the support they need, so that their hard work equals something.
Now, April brought up earlier that national dialogue. And when we're talking and we're hearing about diversity and equity and inclusion, and I hate that they're trying to whittle it down to just the DEI because it's easy to weaponize DEI without saying the whole thing of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But with the national narrative and and weaponizing it. It's the other thing that we keep hearing is merit.
Yeah.
Mm.
Can you clarify that a little bit about merit and how we, people misconstrue it with DEI?
Yeah. So folks, like to say that you should hire the best candidate, right? The best candidate should get the job, and that with DEI initiatives, it's lowering the standards, right? And what part of one of the examples we have working with state agencies is on our hiring processes. So last year, Governor Inslee signed Executive Order 2404, and that's increasing access to state employment opportunities. Some of the things that are part of that are eliminating college degrees and certifications as the only requirement or the only way to demonstrate that you are qualified for a job. Well, if you think about how college degrees could be a barrier, you just think about who can afford to go to college, right? And so regardless of whether someone has the skills to do the job, saying or requiring a college degree for a job that's not required for law, because we definitely want a surgeon to have a degree, right?
Right.
But requiring degrees for jobs that aren't required to have that is a barrier. And so we talk about the way that people can demonstrate that they have the skills and the competencies for jobs is what we should be focused on, not necessarily, some degree that makes it easier for us to screen people in or screen people out. And so I like to make it simple with examples that we have to talk about this work in a real way, because we don't have a merit system. We never had a merit system. And what we're trying to do is move towards something that is fair so that folks who have the skills for jobs can get them. We're working on state contracting as well, so that small businesses have more access to compete for state contracting opportunities. And that resonates with a lot of small businesses too, because we keep hearing how hard it is for them to access state contracting opportunities. So that's the work that we're doing. I think it's going to be challenging, but one of the things we're focused on is how to shape the narrative in a way that people understand what it is that we're doing, and encourage the dialogue. I've traveled around Washington State, so Eastern, Central, Western Washington, up and down the I-5 corridor, and what folks, when I'm talking with them about these specific examples that we have, they're like, well, no, that makes sense. I support that. Right. And so it's a lot of educating, and we have an amazing communications team in our office, and they're working on making sure that everyone in Washington gets to hear directly from us to make sure that they are directly informed about the work we're doing, that we're partnering, because we're still pretty new, but we're partnering with local organizations who know their communities better and who can help spread the word. We're really focused on de-siloing by building network across Washington State, so that folks can be in touch with our work, so that we can be good partners, because there's things that you all know that we need to learn from as well, right? And so we're really focused on building that coalition, who's best situated to do what work, to make sure that everyone in Washington State has an opportunity to access their government, influence their government, and benefit from our activities.
I'd like to add a portion to that question. How important is it to have representation in positions those folks who open doors? Because a lot of times bias plays into who they let come into the door, whether we want to admit that or not, lived experience, perceptions. And when you start coming out of the West Side into the Central and into Spokane, can you talk about how important it is to open doors for people who are not like the status quo, and how important it is to have people who are not the status quo positioned in such a way that they understand? Because that's also, in my experience, part of the issue of who gets what opportunities.
Absolutely. And it's so important to me to, sometimes you have folks who get in and they shut the door after them.
Right.
I want to get in and open the door for everybody.
That's
Right.
what tokenized.
Right.
When people get, people are become tokenized by doing that as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that's important in our office is model the way. And so it's hard when you're like the concepts we're talking about are hard to put into practice, right? It's hard to operationalize, we would say, right? What is that? How do you actually accomplish these things? Nobody knows because we don't have it yet.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is model it through trying it out and seeing what we can accomplish, and then building some sort of, standard or template that others can use. And so in our office, we have a really diverse team. I'm so incredibly proud, through different demographics, but also from across geography, right? So
Yeah.
across Washington State, we have representation. So one of the things that we did really, that we focused on was, how do we remove the barriers in our hiring process, so that we have a more diverse candidate pool,
Right.
right? So we did things like, so for me, I played into my own experience of, I'm not a very good writer. So cover letters, resumes, they're difficult for me.
Yeah.
And you look at me on paper, you're like, oh man, she can't probably do nothing,
Right.
And so we offered verbal opportunities for folks to tell their story,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm a better verbal communicator most days. And then we did two different hiring panels, right? So we had more conversation, a lot more conversation. We also asked questions that spoke to me, to tell me your lens. Like, in your opinion, why are people poor, right? We're changing systems. So we've got to understand that it's not about whether people make bad decisions, because we all make bad decisions, right? But we're all not poor,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what is operating behind the system to have some people struggling and some people not? And so through those processes and refining and things like that, we're able to have a diverse team. And I can't tell you how incredible it is with all those different perspectives. It's challenging, but all those different perspectives in our office, the level of discussion, the depth of dialogue that we're able to have, right? And then when we're talking about the Office of Equity, people usually say, well, who is it for? Right? Who is it for, and who's getting left behind now? Because we have this system where there has to be winners and losers.
Right.
And so it's really powerful when I get to share our photo of our team and our map of where we're located, what city we're located. Because I would say, obviously, representation isn't complete because we don't have everybody in Washington State in our office. But we have a pretty solidly diverse team. And so with that, folks can know that for once, and these folks are tapped into their communities too, so it's not just them, but their community that has access, right, to state government. And so when we're showing up and talking about the work we do, it has a level of credibility to it, but our state benefits, and our state colleagues, my colleagues, I hear feedback about how much they've appreciated working with our team members, the unique perspectives that they bring, and you get that because of the intentionality in making sure that our office has a lot of different personalities and perspectives.
So diversity is a good thing.
Oh, it is. I
not
learn
a
every day.
It's not a boogeyman.
No, and this is what we're going with, the message for Washington for all.
Yeah.
It's for all.
Yeah.
We reject this idea that there have to be winners and losers in Washington State. Right? And so through our actions, through the way we move, through the way we bring agencies together, we want government to demonstrate that in a real way.
Right.
That our world changing and becoming more diverse is a good thing, and that we all still will win.
I love that. My turn. So right now, over here on the eastern side of the state, we are 2% of the population. Black people are 2%, and we are experiencing pushback in different ways. Probably not as visible as what exists in Tacoma, maybe not Seattle. How can we? What suggestions do you have for the BIPOC community to leverage their power so that we can navigate all this pushback? Because we have NAACP, we have Black Lens, we have SCAR, which is, supporting anti-racism in Spokane. And there is just this tsunami right now of hate being increased. I firmly believe in collectivism. When you're 2%, we can't afford not to stand together. How can we in this community over here specifically band together? What are your suggestions for leveraging our power
Yeah.
to fight all the pushback for DEI? I'm 10 toes down. It makes me want to be extra.
You want to be waist deep down.
Yes, like the more you say stuff, the more I'm going to come in and say it more out loud, unapologetically. And I think part of that is stop. Don't allow fear or bullying to navigate how we move in this city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of it, you answer your own question. We have to stand together. We
Yeah.
have to be together. There's not enough of us to be picking each other apart.
Yeah.
We are stronger together, and also, so that's what I would say is that building that coalition, being together, making the umbrella as big as you can, to use a term from Lyle Kwasim in Tacoma. But what I would also say is that we don't have to have it just in Spokane either.
Right.
We want to build that coalition across Washington State, because I think that many of our communities are wanting the same things too. You know, there are some unique differences, but there are things that are in common. And so, you know, I just got connected with a group of folks who are trying to build some coalition, and I can connect you and to join that space too. Just brought in the community and technical colleges. We have some cities and counties, folks who are trying to keep moving this work forward. I love it because of the resource sharing that we can have, right? Where we don't have to create all the things on our own, because that takes a lot of capacity and time from us if we can share and learn from each other and move the work forward. And our office can help support in a lot of that as well. But I would say, you know, go with the goers too, right? Because there's always going to be those folks who are trying to, you know, tear, break people up and divide and all that. And we just have to say we're going to go with the folks who are, you know, who are on page, who are trying to accomplish these goals with us. And then, you know, helping us know at the state level, we want to have more access. We want to be more present. I want to bring my colleagues in here so they can hear and talk and dialogue too, so that we are more in touch with the specific needs in Spokane. And the specific needs of the Black community in Spokane as well, right? So that we make sure that you all are have access to the things that are going to best serve you, because what's going to work for you may not work for the community in Tacoma or Seattle or Vancouver. So we actually have to know that, taking the principle of target universalism, we have to know what your specific needs are, just like other communities that are in Spokane, right? Because if I say we want to make sure y'all are saying, oh, all you care about is the Black people up in here, I know what you're talking about, okay? No, there's enough for us all. We have to understand each community's unique needs, so that we make sure we're serving people better and people's tax dollars are going further.
Right. It's so nuanced, and that's exactly what they'll do. They'll say, "Oh, it's only for the Black people. Oh, it's only for the," and we want to break that. It is that collective energy if we're going to progress. So that leads to the next question: how can we, not just in Eastern Washington, but from Washington State, just normal everyday residents, how can we help on a state level and get involved in the equity initiatives that you may have? Is there like a website? Is there a certain goal? Is there a certain initiative? Is there a program? How can we actually get involved to actually help support the state level?
I appreciate that for sure. So we are working on strategies to build out our communications through digital and analog methods. And so with the, you know, having our flyers and things like that, we would love help in distributing them. You know, right now the state's in a budget deficit, so we were planning to do some town halls in locations. We might have to pause that. We have to see what the budget looks like, but we would love support in gathering folks together, right? Because we want to make sure that as many people as possible can touch state government. Also, we have a website, and you can follow us on our social media. We have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
I don't touch Snapchat.
I know. I knew I was going to get one wrong. And so our website is equity.wa.gov. So
Thank you.
Oh, and we have a newsletter you can sign up for as well, and you'll find that on our website too.
Okay.
I think you kind of answered this question already, but by being present, traveling, boots on the ground, how does your office ensure that equity considerations are integrated into state policies and programs? So you hear it from the people, you get the diverse experiences and perspectives. What happens from that point to how we get policy in action? What's that
so
like?
I have two specific examples that I've kind of mentioned a little bit, but I can talk more about. I talked about the hiring, and some of that is utilizing feedback that we've gotten from state employees or people who weren't able to apply for jobs successfully or couldn't navigate the process. And so we have a lot of perspective to start working on that. So what we did was brought together several different agencies, and we got the executive order signed. We're working on implementing that now. And the Office of Financial Management, State HR, has on their website the toolkit that agencies will use to start changing their hiring processes to create more access to employment opportunities for people. The second thing is our work with state contracting. So we brought together 14 different agencies to tackle our state contracting processes. And because as I've been turning around Washington, I heard from small businesses that say, it's not fair, it's so burdensome, the RFPs are confusing, they're so long, we have to hire a grant writer just to apply, and they wouldn't even know if we're going to get the grant or the contract. And for folks that are small and micro businesses, they're really the backbone of our economy. I mean, if they were more successful, we'd have a really strong economy in Washington State, I believe. So with that group, we're working on building consistency into our RFP processes and standardizing that across the state system. Some of the agencies are leading, even streamlining the licensing process. So as someone looking to open or start a small business, you might have to touch 6 different agencies.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, that doesn't make any sense, right? And then so with the RFP process, just to be a little more detailed, where we market opportunities.
Yeah.
Because you can't apply if you don't know.
Right.
And how are you going to know which state agency has what opportunity at what time, right? The length of time that they're open. What are the criteria and requirements that go into it? What's the screening process and who are the screeners, to get to your earlier point about who is a part of the process to select grant writers? What are the reporting requirements and mechanisms, right? Because sometimes I've heard that people spend more time reporting than doing the work. And seeing if we can at least start on prompt pay for small businesses. And the process will be that we have these agencies, but we also are working with small businesses. And so throughout the process, now we don't need to tell us what's wrong, some of that, because we've heard, but as we're developing solutions, it's important that we develop it in a way that works for small businesses, because we're like, what are they, this is the problem, we'll create the solution.
Yeah.
And then they're like, that's not we don't need that. We did it. No, it's fixed. It's problem solved, right? And we don't want to perpetuate that. So we want to create the solutions together. And so we'll talk maybe as state agencies and then check back. Does this work? Is this working, right? Get the feedback and kind of keep using that process until we develop things that actually work in a real way, because it's validated by the people who are using it, right? So we don't get to validate it as something that's successful. The people who are actually impacted, the people who are actually utilizing or navigating those channels are the ones who get to say whether it's successful or not. And then I believe in iteration. So sometimes we get stuck because we're scared of making a mistake, or is it right? We want to get it right. And it's never going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. So based on this process of, collaboration, let's try it, and then let's seek feedback and make the adjustments along the way until we get something that really is working for everyone. And I feel like that's going to be the process that continues over time too, is that iteration. And I would say too, that with that process means that when state agencies get it wrong, when Megan, the Office of Equity, gets it wrong, we just need to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So if someone says, hey, this is how you harmed me, or this thing excluded me, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, that was unintended. Let me look into it. Let's own it, and then we can fix it, right? So part of this is just stepping into that space of saying, let's own the mistake, but let's fix it, right? Because it's never my intent.
Right.
I'm a public employee. I want to serve. I want to help. That's in my bones, but it doesn't matter if the impact is different. So just own the impact and make the improvements to make the system better.
And I appreciate that because that's that accountability piece.
Yes.
And for so many times we get, especially large organizations, I mean NAACP, if we miss a beat, then it's this intent that we are intending to do. And it's like, no, if we miss a beat, let us know so that we can correct it and give us that space and grace
Yes.
to do that and understand that we are human and we are working on this and it's a collective effort. So that kind of leads into the next question of, and I think you really answered it on, how do we measure the success of equity programs? And NAACP, we're always looking at how do we measure that we're impacting our community, and we try to do surveys, we try to reach out to people, and it's for us it's the feedback that we get from our community, because our community tells us when we're doing right, and they definitely tell us when we're doing wrong. They call us NAACP, you didn't do this. And we're on it. We're trying to make sure that we are listening and keeping our ear to the streets and to the community on what's going on. But is there a formula or a way that you all measure the success of equity programs?
Yeah. So, I really want to just amplify what you said about the grace and that we're human beings. And that's part of the reason why I want to be out and about meeting with people, because you can see the humanity, my humanity, right? And I can see your humanity. It's a lot harder to, send an email to someone. We're like, oh, but she was just here last week. She was so nice. I just can't imagine she did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Those connections are really important because we all need grace.
Yes.
Yep.
And we all need to be given grace, And so I just want to highlight that because I really appreciate that point. For us, I think we're going to do it now. That is the one question I'm still seeking is, we do in government, we do a lot, right? We're busy, hard at work. But the question we haven't really grappled with is, are people better off because of what we did? That really is the question. Are people better off? A couple of things we're going to look at is our dashboard. So in our statute, we are required to produce dashboards. We're going to produce dashboards around community conditions. So we want to know, where is Washington State in relation to housing or healthcare, education? How are we faring as a community, broader community, right? And we want to be able to also utilize the data that state agencies already have. That's not public. To be able to understand how our agency actions are impacting those outcomes. So we can be able to understand whether different investments are needed. And we love this with our lawmakers and our governor, right? They want to make data-driven decisions. We need to be able to give them the data to do that. I think for the equity efforts, being able to look at projects like the hiring, increasing access in our hiring processes, removing barriers, that feedback is going to be key. But also I think some of these things should open up where you'll have more diverse candidate pools. So with our hiring process, if we reduce barriers, you'll see that reflected because we capture that data already. With the contracting, if we have more small businesses getting state contracts, we'll know that we did a better job. And I also hope that we get those feedback loops in place too, to hear directly from folks to understand whether they have felt a difference navigating our process. Even if they don't get the contract, was it easier navigating the process to apply?
What I hear you saying is qualitative data is also as important as quantitative data. A lot of times we look at numbers, but there's always a story behind the data, and that's that relational piece that you've been talking about. So I appreciate hearing that, because what a small town experiences is not the same as what a big city experiences in accessing things. And those are the stories you need to hear, because that also informs the decisions that you make. So a lot of scientists don't like storytelling data, but I think it's very important, because the experience behind why things happen the way they do needs to be considered, because those are the conditions. So
You're absolutely right. If you don't have the story behind the data, you can fill in the gaps. People make assumptions on the way the data is, right?
right.
And oftentimes the people making the assumptions are not the people in the data.
Right.
Right. And so using their best thinking or what they've read, they're making these assumptions and making policy decisions based on that. And they're often incorrect because they don't actually have that experience. And so it's important for me that I'm going around and listening. I'm talking a lot right now, but typically I like to listen and hear from people directly to tell me what their issues are with government. Tell me what your issue are. You know, what are your needs? And we were doing it when we got off the airplane today. What does Spokane need? To, you know, the people who were helping us, right? What does Spokane need? It's really important to me to understand that I can take that information if I hear something, and I can take it back to another state agency and say, hey, are you aware of this as a problem? That means people then have the opportunity to be heard, right? And so, yeah, the stories are so important. And I would never want to look at a piece of data that I wasn't directly impacted by and fill in the blanks.
Right.
And the oftentimes it's hard sometimes to listen to the stories because the stories are telling us of ways that we failed, and that can hurt because we don't mean it, right? But we can't fix it unless we have those stories. That's why it's critical.
So we're on the last question, and I want to talk about this term tokenism. Because a lot of times in organizations, you have DEI initiatives, you have policies, you have resolutions, but day to day, it doesn't feel like there's a real impact happening. And then what does organizational culture is huge in really cultivating the change we want to see. And that goes with leadership and those doing different jobs within the system. How should organizations cultivate the culture within their organization to have a true sense of inclusion? Not we have you here on this committee, or we have you here in this department, and you're here. So we did our town hall a few weeks ago, and one thing that stuck out to me that one of our panelists said was DEI is not tokenism. And I really want to really hear what you have to say about that, because you spoke of it earlier. Sometimes people get in the door and they don't really let anyone in, but that figurehead that's there makes everyone feel like we're on this train of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then you have people on the ground, or people who are at the grassroots, or people who are doing the day-to-day within the larger organization who don't feel what has been stated at the top, even though there are faces that say this is what's happening. You're doing a great job to me of demonstrating how important it is to be in relationship, to be where the people are. But DEI is not tokenism that came out, but can you talk about why that's such an important thing for organizations to realize when they need to cultivate true inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing is you need to incorporate it, because otherwise you'll have the turnover, right? So in a lot of organizations, you can bring in folks from different experiences, but they're leaving at the same percentages, right? And how can we increase it? Because the environment isn't supportive of their success in that organization, right? Oftentimes there's a lot of just difficult culture navigating. And so I wouldn't say that ours is perfect. You know, we're a new organization. Communication is key, and that is the hardest thing.
Yes.
I don't, if you could say you made it with communication, I mean, let me know. And so that's the hardest thing, is how do we make sure that everyone in the organization knows what's going on, but also things are happening like this, One of the things that one of the positions we have is our culture and belonging position. And we are working on, I want to know, like, what is our office culture? What are people feeling? What are the things that, because I can't meet with everybody now, what are things that we can improve on? How do we make sure that we have an environment that's set up of the beautiful diversity of our office, right? Because if we lose those perspectives and they're replaced with folks that are more homogenous, then our work suffers. And so really trying to keep tapped in to the sense of our office, trying to, we just launched a work group in our office, or a collaborative in our office, where we have representation from each team who can look across, how we build a good culture in our office. What are the needs you're hearing in your teams, right? Just other ways to share information that's not necessarily relying on a hierarchy. We try to be flatter, as possible. But I would say that you have to listen. You can't be defensive. You have to value what people say. you have to listen with intent to understand. Sometimes we hear and we're like, oh, I can't believe they said that to me. What? Do they know who I am? Blah, 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 right? You've missed what they said. And so we need to do better. And sometimes we do employee surveys, right? And those surveys can be kind of rough to read some of the comments and things like that, right? I've heard that from directors. But there's also, that's where the gold is. Especially if people are saying the same thing over and over and over again, you really need to listen to that, right? Exit surveys are things people can do. But I think just being humble and, apologizing as a leader, people want to see that humility in their leader. They want a leader that listens. And especially if their idea is taken up, they really love that, right? When you're heard, you're, oh my gosh, you valued what I had to bring to the table in a real way. And so I would say that those are some ways that we're moving in our office. It's difficult because we have so many cultures represented in our office, right? And we're remote. That's why we could hire all across Washington. So it's even trickier to do this virtually, but we're trying to build opportunities in a budget deficit. So we try to build times for connection. We try to do an annual office, retreat. We come together and we talk updates with, share updates across the office and things like that. But we're trying to figure out what are those things that we can do that are meaningful to people. And sometimes just listening, because if they say, hey, well, can we do this? Sure.
Yeah.
Give me the suggestion and we'll see if we can make it happen. Because if it's something that you need, we want to make sure we're supporting your needs. And so I think that's the best way you can approach it. Because folks will say, Megan, we're too busy to do all these different things. And I said, well, are you going to be even busier when you lose your staff?
Yeah.
Like, in government, we're already busy doing things, but we know those things aren't producing the outcomes that we want. So do we want to just keep doing those same things, even though we know it's not achieving what we want to achieve? Or do we take some time and invest in changing our process and our foundation that sets us up for a long-term success?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Well, this has been a very good conversation. I do have one more question for you.
Bonus question?
A bonus question. A bonus. It's a fun one. I'm not going to throw you.
We did all the serious.
We did all the serious stuff. I know that Washington State, and you've been all over. Favorite place to eat?
I don't have one.
You don't have one?
No. So let me just tell you my experience today. I can't remember where I was at. We went to lunch in Spokane, and it was a vegan restaurant. I am not a vegan person. I like my meat, okay? But this was some great food.
Okay.
So I think for me, what I appreciate is the opportunity to experience local cuisine, local food options, and they're unique, and I don't get them. I live in Olympia now, so I don't get them all the time, so they're different. And so I really appreciate being able to visit a local restaurant and eat, because it's always good. Like, people will give me the good recommendation. And so today I had vegan food that was amazing. It was a curry and cauliflower dish, and then I had a fritter.
Okay.
But it was like a corn fried fritter. Anyway, the seasonings was really good, and I really appreciated it. I always love ribs. I love soul food, especially with the ribs dribbling down the juice dribbling down your chin. I love that. But I don't have a favorite restaurant.
Okay, you're an equal opportunist foodie.
And sometimes like you get a craving, like that's where, okay, what I want today, that's kind of how I operate.
All right. Well, I would like to thank you for joining us here in Spokane. You've been here before and talked to community, and just want to express our gratitude for doing the work, for being in community and listening, to your point earlier, listening to us. And we're going to continue to challenge the narrative here in Spokane. And thank you to the Black Lens for opening up this space for NAACP to have this very profound conversation. It's been much appreciated. And thank you for joining us for Challenging the Narrative.
This is Challenging the Narrative, a series that takes a hard look at some of the prevailing mindsets surrounding issues that impact our people of color in Spokane. We examine the facts and the stories behind what has occurred and what needs to be done to shift the narrative in our local community, evolving around civil rights and social justice. Journey with us. Talk with us. Change with us as we challenge the narratives.